Podcast? What are we doing? A podcast? Okay. Hello, this is Justin. Welcome to another edition of Video Creators Lounge podcast. I am once again very happy to be joined with our co-host, Brooke Lambert, who is an unbelievable artist. We have links in the description where you can find her artwork. For those of you listening on iTunes or Spotify, you can check out her Instagram account at Brooke Lambert Artist, where she's got some fantastic pictures of her paintings and her printmaking. And anyway, I'm thrilled that you're here. Thanks for making this easier for me, for being here. And welcome once again.
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Part of the reason why I'm glad you're here today is that it always gives us a few minutes up front to kind of remind our audience, what are we doing with these videos? And of course, what we're doing is we are putting subliminal messages of fried chicken, for which Kentucky Fried Chicken pays us lots of money to do so. And that is our mission, really, right?
Yeah, that's about it. Sums it up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken. Well, what is, can you describe our mission, what we're trying to do here?
We're trying to provide a platform for people doing great work for their community. We want to excite people to become engaged, give people confidence to share what they're doing with the world. And we really want to make videos that highlight what they're doing, hoping that we get more people involved.
That's well put. Yeah, I mean, we've been very lucky to have interviewed people that are incredibly inspiring here in the New England area, that have done terrific work to get involved in their communities. Ideally, with these videos, what we're trying to do is excite people to get involved in community. I guess my hypothesis, where some people would agree, is that the best path to change is something that we can do right here in our communities, local, within a square mile of where we sit right now. And case in point, a lot of the people that we've interviewed have done just that. And sometimes when one person takes a step towards that, it can have a ripple effect and spread throughout the town, to the city, to the adjacent city, to a state, to another state. That's how a lot of fantastic changes always come about, a small group of dedicated people. Actually, I'm pretty excited about our guest today.
Definitely.
Who should be arriving shortly.
Yes, she's almost here.
Now, you know our guest.
I do.
Who is our guest?
Our guest is Charlie Alejandro. She is a motivational speaker, has a charity that's called Sarah Joy Foundation. It's a cancer foundation. She's a retired state police officer. Mm-hmm. She has a production studio in Lowell called Beantown Statie Production Studio. She's written a book.
I mean, she's not still a police officer, is she?
No, she's retired.
She does a lot of work for kind of empowering women and motivational speaking. And I think that's what the focus of our book is, which I'm sure we'll find out. She's just done an amazing work. I mean, raising money and awareness for cancer through her foundation and being kind of a trailblazer in the Massachusetts State Police Department. I'm really, and thank you for, you're the one that introduced us. And actually she has a little bit of a relation to the wonderful woman that we interviewed last week, Darlene Loof. We're going to wait for a moment while Charlie arrives, but for you, we're going to just cut right to it.
Good.
And like magic, Charlie's here. How did that happen so quickly?
Oh, whoa. You're here.
It's like no time went by at all, right?
Ta-da! Here I am.
Amazing, so fast.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Brooke made the introduction, and after hearing your story, that you're exemplify the type of person that we would love to talk to and hear your story. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's interesting. Last week we interviewed Darlene Loof, and she told me the story about how she came to know you through the Sarah Joy Foundation, and of course, your daughter-in-law that I'm sorry to say had passed several years ago now. But out of that, tough situation, a wonderful foundation, connections, and community has grown from that. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear, we heard a little bit from Darlene, but we'd love to hear from your perspective about the Sarah Joy Foundation, and maybe you can kind of tell us a little bit about how Darlene got in the fold here and everything surrounding that.
So I went to Philly because my son and my daughter-in-law lived in Philly, and she called me and she said, do you think you can come down when our second child is going to be born? So we went down there. She had the baby, and I kind of hung around for almost a month. And out of the blue, she just says to me, I have this weird lump in my breast. Can you feel it? And as soon as I felt it, because I could feel it so readily, like my heart just dropped. And I said to her, you need to make an appointment. And this is one of the things we do cover with the Sarah Joys. You have to be your own advocate. Called the doctor. The doctor's like, we'll see you in 6 weeks. I'm like, no, you're calling someone. You call your sister because she works at the hospital, and was able to get her within 2 days into the hospital. And they came back and told her that it was stage 4. And basically what they said to her was,
Wow.
you have 4 to 6 weeks, go home, get your affairs in order, and live your life to the fullest. Our thought was, how do you say that to someone? How do you just say to them, go home, live your life, and that's it, with giving him this news? So once Sarah said, well, no, I'm gonna fight it. I'm gonna fight it. And she did. She fought it for 2.5 years. And in those 2.5 years, one of the things that came out for us was they tell you to go home and enjoy your life, make memories with your family, but you're in and out of hospitals all the time. You're in hospital rooms, you're at chemo rooms, you're in clinics. So where do you get to build those memories? Where do you have the time? And a lot of people don't realize that when you are a cancer patient in a hospital, children aren't allowed in there because they are afraid that they'll get them sick, they'll make it worse. So Sarah was isolated from her children. So that's when her and my son decided, no, we're going to change this. And they decided they were going to travel. We went on a couple of vacations with them, and she parasailed, she went jet skiing, zip lining. She just did everything because she just wanted to leave as many memories as possible. So when she finally passed, my son came to me and said, something has to come out of this. He's like, because if nothing good comes out of this, then I'm going to be just a very angry, miserable person for the rest of my life. And that's when he had the idea of creating the Sarah Joy Foundation. And Darlene, we had been following her journey because she got diagnosed and was being treated around the same time as Sarah. And she was on Facebook. She wasn't even a friend of mine. I didn't know her. So I shared the story with Sarah, and she's like, oh, she's so inspirational. So we would read her quotes and, everything she put there. So when we got the foundation up and running, our first memorial dinner, we wanted to honor a cancer survivor. And Darlene was our first one. So we basically just called her and said, hey, we're having this fundraiser. We'd love to invite you as our guest. And she was all excited. And she said, oh, I'd love to. But she didn't know that I knew she was a singer. She has an amazing voice. We had her sing, and she was excited. She just was so happy with that. And we actually got her a session in a recording studio so she can record an original song. And we thought the producer was the producer comes in, and Brady's like, all right, I'll help her write the song, and I'll help her write the beat and all of this. And the first time she goes to the studio, she's like, oh, thanks. But so I think the word should be this. And this is the kind of the beat that I'm thinking in my head. And she starts singing, and Brady's like, all right, then, well, you go and do what you need to do. So, and that's where her song Strong came from. Okay. But it just kind of became the anthem of the Sarah Joy Foundation, Stand Strong. And I just was floored with the fact that we have a background in pageants. So we made her our queen ambassador. We gave her a crown. We gave her a sash. And she was just all excited. And She didn't
know any of this that was happening. So she came to this event with meeting you for the first time, even though you've been corresponding online.
Yes.
And she goes to this event just under the notion that she was just going to sing, and then you surprise her.
She didn't even know she was going to sing.
Oh, okay.
She didn't even know she was going to sing. She's like, I thought I was going to have some spaghetti, a little glass of wine. Next thing you know, I got a crown on my head. I'm singing. I'm crying. And to me, what it really hit me was what an incredible woman she was, because this opportunity she was given, she just ran with it. She works a lot with Camp Sunshine.
She told us about it.
So she used her crown for that. And then I actually encouraged her to enter a few pageants, which she actually won, because she's just a force of nature. The judges just loved her. And she's gone on to start her own show. Her town named her the Queen of Positivity. She's been in the newspaper. She wrote a book. I mean, she's just unbelievable. So for us, that was our why. That kind of showed us that out of a really horrible situation, a good thing can come of it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when she tells the story, she describes that you and the Sarah Joy Foundation were her inspiration. It's funny now listening to you characterizing her as the inspiration. So
she was. She really was.
That's a fantastic story. That's
because, if you've ever done a fundraiser, you're like, oh, are people going to come? Is it going to be good? What is going to happen with it? And then to have someone like her come and just literally change your life. I mean, she was amazing. She is amazing. Everything she does, she's just She's unbelievable the way she is.
We witnessed it firsthand.
It's very interesting to see how it really came full circle, you know, from her being so inspired by you and you opening up to her. Same thing back around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty amazing seeing it work both ways. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, very sorry for your loss. But, you know, I think your son starting this, I mean, he set off to make something good come of this, and he succeeded.
He put all his time and energy into it, and I think for him it was a good example for his children. One of the things we did do was we didn't want to pigeonhole it into just a cancer foundation. We wanted to be able to help youth because Sarah loved dogs, loved kids, hated running, which was hilarious because we, as a joke, did a road race. And we're like, you know, Sarah's like, yeah, I don't run. So we had like a walking competition in there as well. But what happened was we had my son's friend coached a kids football team in Philly, and they won the championship. They went to the Super Bowl and won the championship. So the coach is like, all right, we're going to get championship jackets for all the kids. Now, these kids come from really bad neighborhoods in the sense of their family don't have the money for that. They just barely have for the basics. So the coach is like, I have to figure a way that every kid is going to get a jacket. Either everybody gets it or no one gets it. And my son stepped up and said, we'll buy the jackets for the kids that don't have it. So he, you know, gave a donation on behalf of the Sarah Joy. And it was amazing to me. I wasn't there. When he said, Mom, he's like, I went into the field and these kids, you know, all had their jackets. And he said, I could have floated off that field. It was the most incredible feeling to see these kids just, and to him, that was a reminder. And they had to make a speech. And one of the things I remember him telling them is, every time you see that jacket, just remember you're a winner, you're a champion. And just carry that with you. And it didn't matter where you came from or what people told you, you did it.
That's
beautiful. Yeah.
It must have brought him so much joy to be a part of that and do that.
Yeah. Or as he called it, he got something in his eye.
That happens to me sometimes too. So that must have been a fantastic experience for him. How are you defining the Sarah Joy Foundation in terms of specific mission statement?
We do. It's basically Sarah's Joy, bringing joy to one person at a time. That's the logo. And our mission statement is to help families out when they have a loved one going through cancer, whether it's, you know, helping them with bills, getting them out of the house, or just helping underprivileged people that need assistance. And that's kind of helped us because we've been able to help with, sadly, final expenses, because that's been something that we've had to do for a couple of people. But then we have been able to get tickets for the Red Sox and tickets for the Bruins and send people away to Six Flags for a weekend. So those are the kind of things that, because when you're sitting in this hospital room, it's like so depressing and you're just there and your kids are home, your family's home. And I saw the difference in Sarah because she was always a very joyful person. But for example, when we went down to Ocean City, she didn't have cancer. She was just Sarah with the family, having a good time. Joking around. I remember, it was so funny. Her sister Mary shaved her head in support of Sarah. So they were with us too. She said, Sarah, it is too hot for this wig. So she just ripped it off in front of everybody. Sarah's like, yeah, I was thinking it was going to fly off when we, so she ripped it off. So she's walking around with, and it was just so liberating for her. It was great to see that for that whole week. She was just Sarah. She was just the girl we knew and was able to make these incredible memories with the family.
Sure, yeah. I mean, everyone that's spoken of her, of course, they have said wonderful things and just what a bright light she was. And
being able to really normalize like her last days and being able to kind of be with her family in a more organic way, not, you know, in a hospital room, which is so sterile.
Exactly. And she was a photographer, and it was nice to still have a lot of her photography. I actually have this picture she took when she was in Costa Rica on one of her outings with her school. And it's a ship just all alone in the sunrise. And it is just an incredible picture because it's so powerful that this massive ship looks so tiny in this massive ocean. And for me, it just symbolizes the fact that no matter how big you are, there's a situation where you're going to be that tiny little person and you need help.
Sure.
And that's what I have, and it just inspires me. And she's done that a lot with a lot of her photography that still remains.
Oh, that's great.
That's amazing, yeah.
It's great that you have that. If people want to get involved with the Sarah Joy Foundation, is there a website or a link, or how do I get involved?
There is the sarahjoyfoundation.org. Also, we're Sarah Joy's Foundation on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just hit us up, say a message. We're always looking for volunteers, sponsors. We were lucky, again, through Darlene, who's amazing. She actually brought some people to the table that donated tickets, concert tickets, sporting events tickets, that kind of stuff. So
that's great.
Yeah, we're always looking for ideas. We are going to be having a fundraiser in May. Actually, Brooke's artwork is going to be featured there too. We're going to have her artwork at our studio. And for us, it's a great way for us to bring back some of our former, we call them warriors, some of our warriors that were honored in the past, or their families, because some have sadly passed. And we became family. We know that we're family and that we will always be there for them.
We will have the links to the Sarah Joy Foundation below. So it's interesting. You spend a lot of time working on these events and with the Sarah Joy Foundation and helping people, and you and your son and your entire family, really. But you also are working in the area of motivational speaking and empowering women. You were a Massachusetts State police officer.
Yes, state trooper.
State trooper.
Yes.
But not only that, and is that you were one of the first women in Massachusetts to be part of the Massachusetts State SWAT?
Yes. Originally, I was with the Metropolitan Police Department, and in 1992, they got merged with the Registry, Capitol, and State Police. But before that, they formed a tactical unit, and they had basically tryouts. You had to train for 12 weeks in blistering summer heat. And I remember a friend of mine says, "Oh, let's go. It's going to be great. We get dress uniforms. We can go to parades." I'm like, "I can deal with a parade. That'd be fun." Showed up at 4:30 in the morning. There's 111 of us, and I am the only female, and my friend is nowhere to be seen.
But no, at this point, you're already an officer?
I'm already an officer. I had been an officer for a year, so I'm off probation. I'm, out on the road, and the teletype, this is going back, this is how they used to do it. They'd send a teletype saying that they were looking for people interested in trying out for the team. And there was a male friend of mine who looked at me, saw the look of horror on my face, and he's like, "All right, battle buddy, this is how we're going to do it." And 12 weeks later, it was down to 60 people. And out of the 60, they picked 44, and I was one of them.
That's phenomenal. So this is 1990.
We actually, it was in 86 that they
So this is 1986. So now a lot has happened since 1986. So the whole dynamics there, and it must have been challenging. Was there a lot of resistance, or did you have to kind of overcome kind of any type of
I think
pushback?
I knew from a jump, because of all the physical activity that was going to be required. You'd see the guys, they'd work out for an hour or two at the gym. I was at the gym 4 hours. I would be running 5 miles if they were running 2. I would be doing more weight, more push-ups, because I needed to keep up with them. So during that 12-week period, they saw that I had these strengths, and I had this thing that, for example, when we had to do the rappelling, you had to rappel off this, 100-foot tower, and it was raining. And as soon as they lined everybody up, they're like, "All right, who's going first?" I'm like, "I am." And I ran up that tower, and I got geared up, and I did it. And it wasn't because I was trying to prove anything. It's because if I look at this tower any longer, I'm going to chicken out, and I'm going to leave. And it was funny to me years later that a couple of the guys that actually made the unit as well said, "I was ready to leave." He's like, "I was ready to turn around, grab my stuff, and leave. And then I see you going up the tower," and they're like, "Dang it. Now I got to do it." So for me, the guys in my unit, because they saw what I could do, I didn't get pushback from them. Now the other departments, they're looking at me like, "Who is this person?" Or going to train, because we were sent to train with the Marines and the Army.
Oh, wow.
And they were looking at me like, "What are you doing here?" I remember one commander said to me, "You are a left-handed female that should have been drowned at birth."
Wow.
Whoa. What?
Oh my God.
You can tell it was the 80s, because they thought there was nothing wrong with that. But to have that person come back 2 weeks later at the end of the training, and he said, "Yeah, you held your own, little midge," because that's what he called me. I was his little midge. And he's like, "You held your own." That was kind of like how it was back then for me. So I was very lucky with the people that were around me. And I was lucky that I was a decent shot, because they originally put me on the search and rescue. And then I got I did the sniper training. I realized that that wasn't for me, because for those of you that have had sniper training, there's certain bodily functions that you have to do if you're up in the nest, and you just can't be like, all right, I need a pee-pee break. They're like, nope, it doesn't work that way. So I'm like, yeah, no, that's not for me. So I wind up hostage negotiation and intel. So that's where I wind up with the unit.
Wow. What do you think kind of gave you that initial drive, right? So, because I think, especially in the 80s or 86, even your friend didn't show up. I mean, I'm sure for a lot of women kind of going into a male-dominated kind of situation like that, what do you think it was that kind of gave you that gusto to say, the hell with it, I'm just going to do what I want, what I think is right?
I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think it was just being naive. For example, when I went into the police academy, it never dawned on me that I could quit. Like, you can quit. I'm like, wait, what? You mean like I can just leave? That never occurred to me. And then, of course, when I was training for the SWAT team, my friend looked at me and said, you are the only representative here for women, and you're a Latina. So I'm like, dude, you're seriously going to put the weight of every woman and every Spanish person in the world on my shoulders? Like, really? But it was so weird. It was just like doing it because it was something that I had started and I didn't know how not to finish it. And it isn't until years later when I found out that at that time there was 3 of us. There was one with the Marines, there was one with the FBI, and myself.
Wow.
And I remember about maybe 10 years ago, there was a female that finally made the Boston Police SWAT team. And they wrote an article on her, hyping her as the first female in Massachusetts on the SWAT team. And quite a few people wrote into the reporter and said, no, that's not right. There was one in 86. And yeah. And it was funny because she called me. She's like, oh my gosh, I thought this was going to happen. She's like, it just didn't seem possible. So she wrote a retraction story to go with it. And I was just very lucky that I was on the team for 6 years. And when the merger went through, now this Metropolitan Police is being joined with the state police. And obviously the state police doesn't want us there. We don't want to be there. So we need to send the best. So they basically said to us, you can have 6 of your guys be on our stop team and the other 6 will be alternates, but you have to pick them. So now at that time, there was 34 of us left. So there's 34 of us in there basically deciding who's going to go into the new unit. And for me, I voted for who I thought was the stronger people. And for me to, at the end of that, wind up being one of the alternates, it just blew my mind away because I never thought the guys saw me that way. And that just was incredible to me. And we did have to overcome a lot of adversity because people are like, oh, you're only here because of the merger. You really couldn't. I'm like, I really didn't want to be here. Now, once I, became part of the state police and I was able to do a lot of wonderful things there. We became family, and it was an amazing opportunity. But we really had to prove ourselves.
Yeah.
And that just showed me that these guys really trusted me and had a really high opinion of me, which was awesome. I never realized that.
I'm curious, kind of going back, what initially inspired you to become a police officer in the first place?
That is so funny. I was always attracted to police work, but not like thinking of it as in a career. I remember when my mother, she wanted a girly girl. So she always had me in dresses. And then, of course, I'd be the one like, let's play cops and robbers. I'm going to be the cop. And then I'd come home looking like I got mugged. My dress was destroyed. My hair was a mess. I just always did. And I remember it was actually my ex-husband who came and said, oh, they're having a test for police work. And it was just that, didn't even think about it, didn't give it much thought. I'm like, all right. We went to the police department, picked up the application. The lady's saying to me, it has to be in by tomorrow. So in a matter of less than 24 hours, getting all the paperwork filled out, everything they needed, sent back in, made sure it was, stamped before 5 p.m. And again, that's where and I call it unconscious competent because I didn't even think about it. I'm like, all right, I filled out my paperwork. I took the test. They'll call me. I'm hired. That's it. And then all of a sudden I'm in the academy and people are saying, yeah, I've taken the test 5 times or I've waited 15 years to get a call. And I'm looking at them like, really? Like it didn't dawn on me.
Sure.
And ironically, fast forward, I'm adopted. And ironically, years later, I found out that my father was also a police officer.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, so when they talk about that, it's in your blood, blue blood, that kind of stuff, which you think is a joke, no, it's legit. I was just always drawn to it, and I never knew why.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you find is like a characteristic or, something like innately within you that you think other police officers had, or maybe your adoptive father had, but like something that's like within you that drives you that's different?
I think what was different for me was that I was more interested in the human aspect of it. I know that there's a lot of cops that are like that, like they want to help people, but after a while they get jaded, because you see the worst of society, you see the worst of the worst, you see people doing really horrible things to each other. But I always gave the person the benefit of the doubt. I didn't put myself in a dangerous situation. But whatever came out of your mouth, I'm like, I'm going to believe you until you give me a reason to not believe you.
Right.
But the one thing I did do that other cops had a hard time doing was that if, let's say you, Justin, lied to me and I found that out, and then a day later...
By the way, I would never do that.
Yeah.
We're scared of you.
I know you've had lots of training. I want to make that clear right off.
He's afraid.
He's afraid.
But go ahead. We can play under this
my gosh.
premise that would
so let's play with this premise. Let's say you lied to me and I found out about it and I got sucked into your web. If the next day Brooke comes to me and she's giving me this incredible story, I'm going to believe Brooke. I'm not going to not believe her because of what you said.
Sure.
And that was the thing that a lot of guys would say to me. He's like, oh, you're so naive. You're like, you believe everybody. I'm like, I'm going to believe you until I don't. And I think that's what helped me a lot, because a lot of people would come to me and say, I was already a victim and you didn't re-victimize me by making me the bad guy.
Right.
And that helped me a lot when I was in working with rape investigations and stuff.
Yeah, that fairness, that like innate sense of being fair. They're different for everybody. They have different set of values or a different set of morals. But I think something I've actually seen in you, just as your friend, that kind of sense of like helping everybody and really wanting to be fair to each person, giving everybody a fair shot. So even if someone does something wrong, if they're telling you, you'll believe them until you don't. So I think that's really, that's.
And I think that's what helped me in my career. It also helped me with partners, because I was able to gauge them and how truthful they were, and they knew there was a line that I wasn't going to cross. And I was the first one. If I saw something that I didn't agree with, I'm like, that's not right. And they're like, oh, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to have part of it. But I wasn't going to be one to just walk away. That's not right. So it's not going to happen. I guess at that time, because they already knew me, it really helped me because they kind of respected that. And I was very lucky with that.
How many years did you serve total?
Total almost 20.
20 years.
Yep.
So you have seen it all. I'm sure you've dealt with probably some pretty heavy stuff, as well as maybe some funny stuff and
oh my goodness,
everything in between.
Being in the drug unit, I was in the homicide unit for 3 years. That I think was the one that really kind of shook my foundation, because we saw some really rough stuff. The funny stuff, it just, you sit there and like, how is it humanly possible that you're just doing this right now?
Well, can you give us do you have anything that sticks out in your mind about
I do. I had this one gentleman. He was so drunk. We pulled him over and he was literally doing like 3 miles an hour. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Soldiers Field Road.
Yes.
So he's doing 3 miles an hour and he is literally going down the line, like just 3 miles an hour. So we pull him over and he finally figured out how to stop the vehicle. And he looks at me. He's like, wow, you're in great shape. I'm like, what do you mean I'm in great shape? Because I was literally walking beside the car as he was driving, trying to get him to stop. Because he had ignored the lights. He had ignored the sirens. So my partner's still driving. So I jumped out and I kind of, I'm walking to him, banging on the glass. He's like, he rolls the window and he's like, wow, you're in great shape. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you're keeping up with me. I'm going about 70. I'm like, put it in park. Just put it in park. Yep. So he in his mind was going the normal speed, and I was some superwoman.
You were like a cheetah.
Yes, I was like a cheetah. I was faster than a cheetah. I'm like, no. And then I finally got him out of the car, and I said, I need your license. And he grabs his license and drops it. And then he literally, instead of bending down like a normal person would do to pick it up, he brought his nose all the way down to like an inch from the ground at his license and just stared at it. And then he gets back up. He goes, screw it. I'm drunk. Just lock me up. I can't find my license.
Oh my my goodness. Was this?
Yeah.
So was it middle of the day, middle of the night?
It was 10 in the morning.
10 in the
10
morning.
in the
no.
morning. So needless to say, how busy that area is. It
Yes.
was just ridiculous. My partner had done the little zigzag to get all the traffic to kind of slow down because we needed to get him off the road. It was,
Oh, when something like that, when you pull someone over, do you still have to go through the motions of, you can tell the clues are all over the places,
Yes.
but you still have to treat it as if we don't know if he's drunk, right?
Absolutely. He might be having a medical emergency.
Right.
He might be, having some diabetic issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the funniest thing is now, a few years ago, the Supreme Court came out with the fact that any questions you ask someone that you think is drunk, you still have to give them their Miranda rights.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to give them that before. So I can't just say like, oh, where are you coming from? How many drinks have you had? It's, you have to do the whole thing, even though if they're literally falling down drunk and you can smell it and they could have 50 beer bottles in the car, you still have to go through. And if they say they don't want to, they don't have to. Then you just write down your observations.
Sure. In a case like that, there's, there's no hiding it, no matter if he says there's anything or not, right? So
Nope.
Right.
He had the license an inch from his face and couldn't see it.
So you've been retired now for how many years from the state police?
Oh man, I retired a while ago, early 2000s.
Okay.
Because I got remarried, and my husband and I wind up with 8 kids between the two of us, and he had.
Wow, that's congratulations.
Thanks. And we had primary custody. I had full custody. He had more than partial custody. So they were always with us, and we sat there and said, all right, 8 kids between the ages of 15 and 18 months. Yep, someone's got to be home. And I was the one that had the most time on the job that had the ability to retire sooner than him.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and your husband was the state police officer as well. And is that how you met, presumably?
We did. My boss called his boss and asked me if I could come out and play because he was in the drug unit. I was actually working with the Weed and Seed program in Chelsea, and I was attached with the stop team.
Okay.
Because the city had basically gone broke. They went into receivership. So the state police went in there. The state had taken over and they sent us in there. So he had seen me and he was doing a case where he needed a female that looked like it was someone that he could be dating or married to. And that's how it happened. And it was funny because the first day I worked with him, I couldn't stand him. I was like...
You're doing undercover work then too, as well.
Yep.
Wow. Now, I know you've written, and we'll talk about that in a minute, a book about empowerment, but I'll tell you, I would love to see, to read the book about your life here. It sounds like a Jason Bourne type of situation.
It's funny.
You're doing undercover work. You're working at all these different units.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually did start writing a book. It's fiction and basically took a bunch of the cases that we worked on and mushed up a few people that I work with into one character. And I am working on that. But it's funny because when you're doing it, you really don't think about it. But then afterwards, you're like, okay, that was crazy.
Right.
That was ridiculous. I just walked into a room with like 8 guys and just me. But yeah, and that's actually, it was because I wound up working with my husband that the unit asked me to come back a couple more times. And like I said, I couldn't stand him. And I remember him going back to his boss. It's like, she's so uptight. She's got like a broomstick up like you know what. And I went to my boss. He's so unprofessional. He doesn't know about partnership. And it was hilarious. Like I couldn't stand him. And then a couple of months later, my boss is like, listen, can you do me a favor? So when your boss says, can you do me a favor? You're kind of like, all right, I'll do you a favor. And I wind up working with him. And then this time we're like, all right, he's not that bad. But
that's funny.
it was so funny. We just could not stand each other the first few times we worked together. I'm like, oh, this guy's such an ass.
So I happen to know about something that Justin does not know about yet.
Oh,
but
really?
But you're working on a short film, right?
Yes.
That has a lot to do with your police work, or fictional, but draws inspiration from that. Do you want to talk about that at all?
You're referring to Code 13?
Code 13 and
Yes.
Stillness of the Run,
And
too.
Stillness of the Run.
Yeah.
But this is all part of the production company.
Yes, well, we have to talk about that.
I guess
in
we have to talk
general.
about that as
Yes.
well, right?
Yeah, we have to segue.
Is that all right? Let's segue.
Okay.
So after retiring, you started a production company. Before we get into the movie.
Yeah, that's fine.
Actually, no. After retirement, I wind up learning to bake cookies at the PTA fundraiser and just be a stay-at-home mom, which, like, goodness gracious, I don't know how people do it. It was, I think, by far the most challenging job I ever had. I remember volunteering for they had the preschool, the 5K, the little kids, the 5-year-olds. So I'm in this room with 10 5-year-olds, and I'm like, I'm terrified. I'm like, can I get a bad guy with a gun, please? Because, they're crying and they're all snotty and they want to hug you. And I'm like, oh no, this is not me. So my son, Alex, he was into filming. He liked acting. And so we wind up together kind of auditioning for a few roles that, films. And he wind up picked for a couple of things. And unfortunately, the productions never went anywhere. Mm-hmm. And then his school was in the Actors Guild, the guild competitions that they have for high school kids. He wound up actually winning a couple of awards for his acting.
That's great.
So we were always goofing around, doing that kind of stuff. And I remember actually J.R. Hepburn, the gentleman that we did the movie The Trap with, he actually knew of us being cops and all of that. He was going to make a movie called Blue Suede. So he asked if we could train the actors to look like real cops. So I kind of corralled my husband into that, and we did that for a week. It was great. We had a lot of fun. That's when I brought Johnson on board. Johnson C. is one of our guys on my team. Peter Maynard, a kid we knew from Ed Forever, he came on board too. So that's kind of like was the beginning of CPG, the training part of it. And then from there, I wind up meeting this gentleman, Seth Chidwood, who was phenomenal, 16 years old, doing all kinds of web series. And so from there, we became friends, and we wind up writing Code 13, which was a series that was about a female cop and, trying to find this kidnap victim. So we wrote the script, and then I went and, my husband read it, and he says, well, now what happens? I was like, well, we can try to sell it, and they can do whatever the heck they want with it, and we walk away, or we can try to find the funding to produce it. And that's what we wind up doing. And when I say I did not know what the heck I got myself into, my husband had no clue. Like, if we had actually sat down and thought about it, we're like, no, there's no way we can get this done. And it was incredible. We wind up getting the most incredible cast. Sang came on board as our DP. He's our soundstage manager. And
yes, I met him briefly.
Yeah, he's amazing. We wind up becoming friends with him. We filmed for 4 months at the location where the studio is now. So fast forward, we wrap. And then my husband's like looking around saying, this would be a great place for CPG, start my security business, do the training. Because at that time, it was just the office. Like the soundstage was just a shell. There was nothing there. But yeah, just like a hull, no walls, nothing. From there, Seth came back and said, I have this other web series that I'd like to do. So we wind up filming there. And then he wind up going to California. And then that's when we sat down with Sang and said, what can we do with this space? Like, what can we get accomplished?
Because you invested in equipment and audio and video equipment. And
it was crazy. It was like we were just flying by the seat of our pants. So luckily Sang got us in there and got us straightened out. So that's basically was the birth of it going from CPG focused to Beantown focused. So we started doing, more projects. We actually entered a couple competitions. So we actually sat down and said, what projects can we get going quick? Because everybody that's done production knows when you have something as overwhelming as a web series and you have like zero budget, it's not something that you can get out overnight. I went to the LA Web Fest because a couple of our web series with Seth got nominated and actually won a couple of awards. And this gentleman, Michael, gave this incredible speech. And he said, if you think you're going to film something today and get it out tomorrow, you're in the wrong business. And he told us that his web series, his series called Beauty and the Baller, went from the moment they wrapped, not even from the moment they wrote the script, from the moment they wrapped to the moment it was actually aired on TV, it was almost 6 years.
Yeah,
so I believe it. Yeah, and that's what he said to us. He's like, a lot of filmmakers make the mistake that they just want to get it out there, and that's where the issue is. You got to know your worth and play it smart. So then we decided, my son is a clown, and he can cook. So we had always had this idea, because everybody kept saying, you should have a cooking show. And he's not a professional chef. He's self-taught. So we came up with the concept for Cardiac's Kitchen. Yeah,
great show, by the way. I've seen it online. It's YouTube. We will also link to that show below. If you haven't seen it, it's creative. It's funny. You'll laugh. You'll cook.
Oh, yes.
You'll eat a lot of food.
Yes. So we did that. We were able to navigate through the by we, I mean Kenny, was able to navigate through the inner workings of Amazon Prime, and we were able to get the show on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so. that's
No.
good for him. All of you.
Yes.
It's no joke. Yeah.
No, that was all Kenny. Kenny was the one it was my idea. I'm like, Kenny, I have a great idea. Here you go. And, so I was able to get the company approved and say, yeah, okay, we'll look at your project. But it was all Kenny that got it in there. And got it done. So
and really, Cardiac's Kitchen has its own mission behind it, like to make food that's accessible, not too expensive, easy to make, so that you're not using too many ingredients. And
yes, we originally, Vinny would always say anybody can cook. I said, yeah, we don't want Disney suing us with Ratatouille or Pixar, whoever owns the rights to that. So it was a running joke, and then the other running joke we had is don't eat that, because he's very funny and he's very rough in the kitchen, so he'd constantly be dropping stuff. And his premise for the don't eat that is he's dropping stuff, don't eat it because it's on the floor. But it's also because he wants to teach people that they can cook at home, and you don't have to live off fast food. You don't have to live off processed food. And recipes that might seem very hard, he's broken them down. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he decided early on that he was going to break the fourth wall, which for those that don't know, it means he was actually going to look at the camera, talk to the crew, and he has incorporated that into that. So if you thought season 1 was funny, season 2 is out of control.
Yeah.
It's out of control.
I'm
I can't wait for it. I am so excited. And not because he's in the room, but Kenny is just an unbelievable editor. He has made it just funny and fun, and you guys are going to have a lot of fun watching this. And then because we had always focused on someone else's project, I had written the script for Stillness of the Run, which is very heavily on some of my experiences from the homicide unit. And I brought it to the team. They thought it was a good idea because it has the ability to be a stand on its own short film, or it can be a pilot. And basically the things we think about when we don't have a lot of money, it's, 2 sets, 2 locations, minimal actors, minimal props. So that's what we decided. And this is the first time, which is funny because you have a production company, and I did like acting. I love acting, but I really haven't acted in any of my stuff or my productions. So this is actually be the first time that I step away from the producing and directing and all that. And I'm just going to be a diva on set.
And what was the first that started this off? The one that you wrote and produced and did it on your own. What was the name of that one?
The series that we haven't released yet, that was Code 13.
Code 13. Okay, so that's not released yet.
No. Kenny's editing that for us. And we're actually hoping to have the private screening for the actors in May.
Okay.
And then we're hoping that by the end of the year, we'll be able to start submitting it to different...
That's great. Are you excited?
I am really excited because that project, it's so funny because I've had people that have been in the industry for a long time. I have seen snippets of it. They saw the production that we did, and they're like, that had to be at least $100,000 budget, $150,000 budget. My husband and I are like, if only.
The amount of work, I can just speak to this a little bit, that you do with Beantown is like, they have 5 people, really. Yes. 5 to 6 people on every production, and they make these, fully like animated, immersive, lit and really professionally.
It's incredible. And that's the thing,
professional audio.
And that's why I feel so blessed with the team we have with Kenny Johnson, Sang, my husband, and Vinny. Vinny, not so much because not that he's not good, but he's more in the talent mode right now, and he does a lot of the writing for Cardiac's Kitchen.
Okay,
and he lives in Rhode Island, so he doesn't have the ability to hang out with us as much as he could. But the core group for us is those guys, and the fact that anything we think we need, like Sang has pulled these elaborate sets out of I don't know where.
Definitely.
The fact that we actually did a movie, a short for a competition. The competition was it had to be filmed on an iPhone. And Kenny had an idea. And at that time, it was just an idea. It wasn't even a full script. And I remember reading it. I'm like, honey, who hurt you? But from there, it morphed into this really cool script that we want to make. You're
talking about Chains.
Chains,
right? Okay.
Yes, Chains. And it didn't win for the iPhone competition, but it went on and won an award for Best Narrative at the Screaming Ostrich festival, and we've entered it into a few others, and everybody comments on it because
I saw it. I watched it. I had no idea that it was filmed on iPhone. They told me later.
That's
I said,
what we get
"You're
a lot
kidding
of.
me."
Yeah, because Sang is such a DP genius, and his lighting and the fact that
The
you had
creativity, it's just,
oh my gosh. Like when you see the rope and you hear it and the way he did it. But for me, I think what cemented it was Kenny's acting.
Yeah.
Because, you have someone literally hanging upside down for 10 hours. I don't know how long you can hold a character when you're losing consciousness and there's blood rushing to your head.
I was amazed when you first showed me that. That was really,
And it's funny too, because it was his script, but we made him audition for it. And it was funny because he's like, when I wrote it, I envisioned myself, but I didn't think I was going to, actually be the one playing it. And I'm like, do any of us look like we can hang upside down for 10 hours? No, but he killed it out of the park. He made it so believable. And it was funny because, I was in the room when it was filmed. I did the makeup for it, the FX and all of that. But when I saw it, I was having a full-blown panic attack for Kenny's character because of the situation he was in. And that just blew my mind because he sold it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of talking about similar to what you're talking about, with the creativity that Sang has and other people on the team have. I mean, I know some crazy things you're already planning on doing for Stills at the Run that I won't necessarily divulge, but but I think it's kind of like a real testament to that. Like, all we have is an iPhone and some rope. What are we gonna do? You're really able to pick up on very low budget, but able to really make amazing work. And I think I just am curious, like you guys are artists basically, but what drives you to even if you have like very little resources to keep going and making stuff?
For me, it's the team. If I didn't have the team I had, I'm not going to lie, I would have pulled the plug a long time ago. Because there were times that I would sit there saying, I could be sitting on a beach in Aruba right now. The kids are all out of the house. My husband's retired. Why am I doing this? But for me, it's the team, because the team pumps me up, and I don't want to be that person to go to the team and say, remember when I told you we can make our dreams come true and this is going to be really big? I lied. I'm going to Aruba. Peace out. See you guys later. Because we feed off each other.
Yeah.
And the fact that I very rarely remember a time where the team has said, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. Yeah. We've had times where we're like, we can't do it now, but we're definitely going to get ready for it next year. Like if it's a competition or something that came out too quick. But we'll sit there and they'll be like, well, the lighting and the cameras and this, and then, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
So that's what drives me. It's them. It's unbelievable, the team we have.
And
how do we do this? Not like,
oh my goodness,
like literally making sketches and all sorts of
things.
And
it's funny too, because Johnson, I like picking on Johnson, because one of the things he used to say a lot is like, why do I have to do that? And Sang's like, because there's no one else. We all already have 3 or 4 jobs. So guess what? It's your turn.
Yeah.
And that the willingness of them to be able to do that. Like Johnson has done some background music for some of the projects. He's actually has really taken off with his photography. It was something that he wanted to do. And Sang is an incredible teacher. Like if there were 5 Sangs, I'm pretty sure he alone could run Beantown, because he definitely knows more than us. But and just the fact that he's willing to work on it and develop it. Right. And
really your collaboration as a team, because I mean, every one of you brings something different. And
they do. And the thing is that they recognize the team concept, which means that, okay, today we're going to work on Kenny's project. Tomorrow we're going to do, something for CPG. Tomorrow we're going to work on something for Charlie. Tomorrow we're going to help Sang with a project, or, Johnson needs help with something, or we're doing Cardiac's Kitchen. It's just the fact of that. Like when we did Chains, Vinny stepped in and was the bad guy. And then on top of that, he was helping with, the background. And it was funny because his son, little Vinny, was sitting there. He was the one blowing the smoke into the area. So it's a true team effort.
And it's interesting that because the first venture into this world was asking for your expertise in firearms. And that just kind of led right into this, which is interesting. So I have to ask you, given your experience, I'll tell you, there's a couple of movies that stick out in my mind. And any movie by Michael Mann, I feel, in terms of firearms usage. I think of Linda Hamilton in like Terminator 2.
Yes.
You know, I know that you now have an eye for this. And when you're watching a movie and people using firearms, you can't help but to just notice things. Is there anything interesting that you've noticed?
Because it's like my kids hate watching movie with us. They hate because one, my husband will usually figure out the plot within 30 seconds.
Right.
And then, of course, we're critiquing the techniques because they're not realistic or they're not safe. And for example, I hate to say this because it was filmed in in Rhode Island, Body of Proof. The series was filmed here for a year and then it moved to LA for the following 2 years. And I'm watching this scene where they have this supposedly seasoned female sergeant and she's got her gun out. Now, it's a semi-automatic. If you're familiar with semi-automatics, the slide goes back when you fire it. And she's got both her thumbs crossed over the back of the slide, meaning if she had to fire that weapon, she's going to rip her thumbs off. And it was so prominently featured that I'm like, no one caught that. No one caught that. Or the fact that I'm sitting there counting rounds, 15, 30, 45, 60. Are we reloading anytime today? Oh, he's reloading now, like after 60 rounds. And that's just the thing that as a cop, it becomes ingrained in you that you actually know how many rounds are going on. So someone with a Smith & Wesson special that has 5 rounds and they fire 50 rounds in a movie, you're like, okay. The other thing that's a pet peeve for me is when there's a massive explosion, AKA Michael Bay, and people get blown over and then they just stand up perfectly fine. They might do the little what, like they can't hear, but I'm like, their equilibrium would be off. They'd be throwing up. They'd be walking around in circles. So stuff like that, just like, can we get a little realism? So what my husband does now is when they ask him to train actors or for a film, he tells them from the beginning, do you want real or Hollywood real? And they're able to say, well, what do you mean? So this is the way we would really do it. And he's already learned to incorporate cheats for like camera angles and lighting and all of that. Or do you want it to be like Hollywood, Charlie's Angels, rolling barrel, split roll, and then go in and fire and hit your target kind of thing. So those are the things that he'll ask. And that way he's able to accommodate the actor, but we're very strict on that on set because one of the things is when our actors go through the training, we want them to be able to walk into any SAG set anywhere in the world and be on point and not get thrown out for doing something inappropriate with the weapon.
Right. Safety is a huge part of the training, and the majority of the training is safety, right?
It is because sadly, you guys know there's been a couple of actors that have gotten killed on set. One of them, I can't remember his name right now. He was making a movie and he was goofing around and sadly got killed from the wadding because it was too strong. And then, Brandon Lee, same thing. There was too much gunpowder in there. So the wadding killed him because I remember being on the tactical unit where we trained with so-called blanks and I had the shotgun and they're like, let a round off. And I did, and it shattered the window. So luckily there was no one sitting that close to it, but those things can still hurt you if they're used inappropriately.
Now, you've been retired for some time, but I'm sure there are some kind of instincts that are still with you that probably never go away. Is there anything, in your retirement that in some ways you might have been happy for your former training, or something that came out that you were kind of almost shocked yourself at all?
I remember we were at a restaurant and then all of a sudden someone started choking, and it was one of those things where it just instantly kicked in. Or for me, I'm ruined and my kids all think will need psychiatric evaluations at some point because we always sit with our back to the wall, make sure we can see the exits. We used to have contingency safety escape plans if, God forbid, a shooter came into the church, which sadly is so common now. We had a meetup spot, a safety spot, and they knew their job was just to get out of there and go to the safe spot. If you could hit the fire alarm on the way out, great. If not, just get out of there. So those are all things that were ingrained and still stick with me. Like, someone will walk in and I can tell what they're wearing. I'm looking at their hands, I'm looking at their height, and that just sticks with you. Kind of stinks sometimes because you just want to sit there and relax and, oh, did you see the blonde guy? No, but I saw the guy that was wearing, this and this and this and that, because it just happens so quickly. And the funniest thing was my son said to me the other day, we were having an event at the studio, and he says, Mom, can you stop visually patting people down when they come in? Because he was in the Army, but he also worked as a bouncer. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was like,
Right.
seriously? He's like, Mom, you have physically patted down everybody that came in through the door. I'm
Oh,
like,
my
wow.
goodness.
Yep. It was just,
It's like that, instinctual kind of gray matter in the spine. It's just,
it's crazy.
Right.
The hands are looked at, then you look at the belt area, then you look up, and then you look down, and then you look at the face again and move on to the next one. He's like,
Right.
stop it.
Well, I feel like this is probably the safest the Video Creators Lounge has been. I feel pretty safe right now.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Very good. Now that you had the production company, but this just kind of organically led into helping kind of women and hear your story and be inspired by you. And what was the first venture into the motivational speaking, which eventually has led you now to write a book?
I think for me, I was very painfully shy as a child. I hate talking to people. It just felt awkward to me. And that was something that I had to get over as a cop, because you're talking to people all day long by yourself and you're in a position of authority. And then I remember my friend saying, she was on the speakers bureau, and she said, the person that was supposed to come with me today is sick. Do you want to come with me? So we went into a school in the inner city, and we had the opportunity to talk to a bunch of 7th graders. And one of the things that hit me was she was African American. She has since passed. And here I am, Latina. And the fact that these kids were looking at us like, whoa, because they could identify with us and being a woman. And that was the first time that I really noticed the impact that you could have by telling kids something so simple as, I've been where you've been. I come from a broken home. We come from a not so nice neighborhood. My mother struggled to put food on the table, but somehow I'm here. It really kind of planted a seed for me. And the flip side of that is when my kids got older, I started coaching their soccer team, because they had this soccer coach that was just awful. Really nice guy, but didn't know anything about soccer. And I don't know if you've noticed, we can be a little competitive. I'm like, they're not learning anything. So I wound up coaching them, and it was a co-ed team. And again, there was that impact that there were kids that didn't have 2 parents or didn't have parents that were involved, and just us talking to them and what we were teaching them was motivating them to do other stuff. And then years later, as adults, they're like, Coach, I remember this. I remember. There's still the fact that they still call you Coach. And that kind of planted the seed for me. And then when I moved to Lowell, my mother-in-law was very involved in community work and just started meeting people. And one lady said to me, can you come to this event and just talk to these kids? And that's how it started. Just next thing you know, I was being invited into the schools, UMass Lowell. I actually got to go to Texas A&M and do a presentation for them out there, which was amazing, just to see these bright minds going out into the world and the fact that they felt my words impacted them. So that was my way of kind of giving back, because I knew for a fact the reason I was where I was it wasn't because of my family, because they just didn't have the ability to give me that, but it was because I had really great teachers. And the ironic part is they were male teachers, which, a lot of times people think of teachers as females because it is predominantly, but I had mostly male teachers in the 7th and 8th grade, and they were the ones that just put this drive in me and I'll never forget, one of them wrote in my yearbook, silver and gold may fade away, but a good education will always stay.
I like that.
Yes.
I've never heard of that. I like that.
Yes. Yeah. And he went on to elaborate and said an education isn't something you get in school. It's educating yourself in life, being open-minded to learn from other people. And my mother, working as a cleaning woman in Boston to put food on the table, also cemented to me that everybody needed to be treated with respect, whether it was the CEO or the janitor or whoever. Because they were humans, they had a story. They didn't deserve to be looked at any differently. So that's kind of where it came from, and it just kind of snowballed. And it got kind of put on the side burner for about 6-7 years when I was helping my son with his kids, and then he remarried. I moved back, and I kind of lost track of it for a little bit because you get into the grind. I wind up getting a job as in security as a logistics manager, and then one day last year it hit me like, wait, hold up, this lady invited me again to Women's Week in Lowell for the kids, for the teenagers at the high school, and again just to see these kids who I know what I was like as a teenager coming up and said, Miss, I really liked what you said, asking questions, being engaged. So it kind of really hit me that that's what I was passionate about. I loved acting, I loved production, but being able to plant a seed for me that was the passion. That's what I wake up to and go to bed to.
I definitely can relate to some of what you said. And I was a teacher in the Boston Public Schools for about 5 years for different art nonprofits. And I think the part that I especially related to you is like those kids don't necessarily have someone to relate to. They don't necessarily have a mother or father figure. They don't necessarily have someone in the school system that they connect with. And for you to be able to go into the schools and, wow, that could be me someday, like to have that connection for them is really special. And I just wanted to reflect back that I think that's really amazing that you did that.
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, starting from a place of being very shy, now you're at all of these events where you're front and center in front of everybody communicating out. And there's always going to be a connection that you can probably find between any of the young people that you're speaking with. So that probably helps, I'm sure, to be such a kind of a diverse set of things that you love in your life.
I do. And having been a police officer and having taken classes like body language and, silent cues that they call them, or tells, it has helped me to be able to see an audience and at times be able to see that one person that wants to be invisible, but also wants to say something or wants to be helped or wants to figure something out. Yeah. And I always tell my audience, the fact that you're here already makes you a winner, because for every person that's in the seat, there's 10 that said, next time. And one of the initiatives that I am going to be promoting this year, which correlates with the book and my public speaking, is #humankindness. And a lot of people like, oh, you're being kind, but it's the 3 words. It's humans, because we're all humans. And then we need to have kindness to be nice to each other. But the kindness to me is also that we're a lot alike. Right. And that's how I do it. I never share anything negative on social media. If it's that negative, I'll probably just block it because I don't want to see it. And I love to see people win. I love to people to succeed and just share it forward, because I feel joy when people succeed, and it just makes me happy.
But what started? How did this kind of make its way into your overall kind of motivational speaking, and now it's going to be into your book?
Because I started with this thing that I decided that I was going to cut all negativity out of my life. I realized that I myself had become very negative, and some cops, unfortunately, we wind up getting in that kind of frame set. And I didn't want to do that. So I started making a conscious effort to only share positive stuff on social media. And I didn't feel the need to have to explain it or put a story to it or my own spin on it. So I came up with, thinking about it, that hashtag came to my mind and what I felt it meant. So anytime I share anything, that's all I put, #humankindness. And from there, I use the hashtag all the time. And what I want to challenge people, especially business owners, you have to give back. You have to give back. Even if you feel you're struggling financially, it's not about just writing a check. You can give of your time. The fact that you have a business, you've already done more than some people have already done, and you've done stuff that people want to do. So giving of your time is a huge factor, or just being kind to someone. Hold the door open, say thank you, good morning.
Sure. Now, how has the shift that you've taken affected you personally?
Aside from my husband thinking I'm insane, because I will burst into instant song and dance for no reason, it's just made my whole life better. And I realized, because I heard Anthony Robbins speak, because he's one of my, I just aspire to be something like him someday. He said that it takes a lot of effort to be sad. He said if you sit there and you have a frowny face, it's easy to get into that glut, like I'm listening to this sad song and leave me alone, I'm having my moment kind of thing. Whereas if you're smiling, he says, try to be sad or try to have sad thoughts if you have this really goofy grin on your face. So I realized that I was really putting a lot of time and effort into being miserable and angry and hating mankind and everything in it. Whereas it was more fun for me to be friendlier and kind and just notice the little things in life, like people adopting dogs, or, someone shoveling someone's driveway, or some lady leaving stuff out for her Amazon driver so he can have a snack. So things like that really hit me, that it doesn't take a lot of effort to be kind. And me personally, mentally, I realized that I felt healthier, I felt happier, and it was easier for me to connect with people that way.
That's great. That's great. And to see that it's impacted not only the people around you, but you yourself. And by the way, that makes sense to me.
I guess for me, it hit me because I remember a couple of times I got volunteered to do stuff at church. And I was like, why do I have to do this? I said, all mumbly. And then I realized if I'm not going to do it from a place of kindness, don't even bother doing it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we went in there and helped in the service or whatever we did, you just leave with this incredible feeling of, wow, something so small. Change someone's life. I mean, something so simple as cleaning their kitchen or, picking up a gallon of milk for them. It just blew my mind how different it is. And I just feel so different about life in general.
Really has that ripple effect, like we saw with Melrose Kind and Kindness Day and, one person helping another and then another.
Yeah. So tell me about this book now. We alluded to it a little bit.
Yes.
You mentioned about how you're integrating kindness as part of the I guess you'd call it curriculum or one of the things you're focusing on. What else am I going to read about in this book?
So the book's called An Ordinary Woman's Guide to Creating a Happy Business and Staying Motivated in Life and Other Fables. And the reason I hit on the other fables is because there is no such thing as a magical happy business or magically staying motivated in life. That's something that you have to create. And I am an avid learner. I read, I listen to motivational tapes, motivational speakers, go to all kinds of workshops. And again, Anthony Robbins said, if you go to a workshop that's really awful, you at least learn one thing. It was awful, and you learned that you don't want to do that to other people. So what I incorporated into my book was I didn't want it just to be a business book. So you're going to learn how to start a small business or a micro business. I call that chapter the blah, 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 legal, blah, blah. Because that's what it is. It's like you have to register your business with. Yes, that is the name of the chapter. The blah 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 legal blah blah. Oh. Because to a lot of people, when they start a business, that's the intimidating part, and to them, it does sound like a lot of gibberish. So I do walk them through registering with the city, getting a bank account. If you need to get an employee ID number. So basic things that it's not intimidating. This is the website. This is where you go. This is how you do it. But then I also wanted to make them realize that there's more than just the business. You got to carry that out into your life and into being able to stay motivated in your life. Because as a business owner, and I'm sure you guys know, you're putting 80, 90 hours into this, and then you go home and what life? You're like exhausted, you're tired.
Sure.
But you got to stay motivated to have that part of it too. So basically the book will guide you through things to do to stay motivated, realizing that your team is going to be the most important thing, your synergy, who you surround yourself with. They're going to be your ride or die. They're either going to make you or break you, or you're going to drive everybody away. Just to understand that in order for you to be a successful business person, you have to have balance, because we know a lot of successful business people that have been married 5 or 6 times, or their kids don't like them. Nobody likes them. They're just those kind of people. And that's what you don't want to get into. And I feel that for me personally, my business, everybody looks at me like I'm this, bad, amazing businesswoman. And I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of month left at the end of the paycheck. But I'm happy, and we're happy what we're doing. Like for me, nothing brings me joy that coming into the studio and I'll see Kenny in the editing room, and Johnson will be, messing with the camera, and Sang will be doing whatever he does in the sound stage. And my husband will be at his desk, doing what he does, because it's being used. The space is being used.
Sure.
So if I sit there and only put the value on it of how much money is coming in, I'm missing the whole picture. Because I feel that my team understands they have a sense of ownership. And with that, it's translated into friendship, where we have movie night. We go out and do stuff together. We go eat. We actually went on a road trip for Cardiac's Kitchen and didn't kill each other. Came close a few times, but didn't. So that's basically, for me, that's what I did. I broke it down into 10 chapters, and every chapter will give you the backbone of what you need. But then I'm going to pad it up with the meat and potatoes of this is how it's going to work for you. And I tell them flat out, I'm not an expert. You need to figure out what works for you. But it does start with you. Sure. No one else is going to do this for you. So it's up to you to stay motivated. And I even jokingly say, maybe this is the time where you take the book back and get your refund because it's not for you.
Interesting. What I love about it is it really seems that you're capturing some very practical, kind of pragmatic approach to some things, but you're also touching upon
the mental state, a little bit of the spiritual or kind of mindset. I think that's missing in a lot of business books. So I've read, I've had to read a lot of books that are very focused in one particular area, but are not keeping check of your mental state or your mind.
I was at her talk, and I was actually curious, going along with what Justin's saying, for you to talk a little bit more about the personal part of it, because you said it starts with you. It doesn't start with your business. It doesn't start with your team.
Right.
It starts with you as a person. And can you kind of like shine some light on how that part of the book goes?
Well, the part of the book asks you, the main thing is the why. And because you were at my talk. A lot of people will say, I want to start a business. I want to be my own boss. Great. Why? So I will have more money and my boss won't tell me what to do and I can take time off whenever I want and my kids can come to work with me. Those are all great, but that's not your why, because that's not going to motivate you to put 90 hours, 100 hours into your business and get paid absolutely nothing, because we all know when we own a small business, usually everybody else gets paid before you do, if you ever get paid. So I try to tell people you need to find your why. And that why comes when you open your eyes. What do you think of first thing in the morning? Do you think about crunching books? Do you think about balancing the checkbook? Do you think about, having to shovel the walkway? That's probably not what you're thinking. And if you're thinking that, then you're majoring in the minutia of the business. The why is what will make you passionate. The why is what's going to keep you coming back day after day when your film doesn't win an award, when your script goes to heck, when you spent a week filming an amazing project and then your director up and quits and then decides he's going to take the audio files with him. So there's nothing you can do with it. No matter how much of a magician your editor is, there's nothing he can do. So you got to start all over again. Sadly, that's what people don't have, is the why. They have what the world told them. Oh, if you're a business owner, you'll make money, you'll have freedom, you can do whatever you want. But they don't understand why they want to do it. Just like a lot of kids, they go to college. Why? Oh, because mom said I have to go to college, or dad says, or it's to get a good job. But they never think about what that good job is, right, and how it's going to relate to the rest of their lives when they're saddled with these huge loans, because they haven't thought that far. And unfortunately, because they haven't thought that far, they wind up taking a major that they're probably never going to use. Nowadays, the average kid will not use whatever they graduated with, unless it's like, something really specific, like pre-law, pre-med, that kind of stuff. But the thing is, they don't know their why. They're basically doing things from stuff that was told to them, but they never questioned why they're doing it. Sure. And I think in a way, our kids were a bad influence because we allowed them to be free thinkers. And that was a challenge for my husband, because he comes from the old school Puerto Rican style of you do what I tell you and that's it, where he learned that I don't expect the child to be disrespectful, but I do expect to listen to what they have to say if they have a legitimate argument. I want to hear their point of view. So for us, when our youngest came to us and said, I want to go to culinary school and be a chef, I'm like, do you even know where our kitchen is? Because I've never seen you in it. And we had this conversation, and he said, this is what I want to do. He had volunteered to be the short order cook at this job he had his senior year and junior year of high school, wind up loving it. He went to culinary school for a year, wind up getting an internship on a farm. From there, they asked him if he wanted to be an apprentice to learn how to butcher. He said, I won't kill anything, but I'll learn how to cut it. And he did, which is a dying art form. And he wind up becoming... Absolutely. It is. He became the head butcher, and he basically ran the restaurant for 2 years for them. Fast forward now, he's 27 years old. He's had his own business for 3 years. He's completely debt-free as far as school loans because he went to school for a year. That was it. And while his friends are just now, a couple of years after we're graduating, 4 and 5, he was already established in the business. But we allowed him to do that. And I said to him, you have to be your own thinker. Like, our daughter decided she was going to be in sports medicine. And I'm looking at her like, why? Is that what you think of in the morning? No, I hate algebra. I hate anatomy. I'm like, so why you do? Well, my friend told me it makes good money. I said, so you want to spend the rest of your life touching hairy guys' legs and getting hammies out? She goes, oh, Lord, no. I said, so what do you think about? She goes, I think about dance. I think about music. I think about singing. I said, so that needs to be your major. And she wound up going into music education, and she actually wound up heading up the ballroom dancing company at Southern Utah University, where she went. And she was happy with it. And I said, if you're doing what you're passionate, the money will follow. It will.
I mean, to a certain extent, what anyone does with anything is what they make of it. I mean, I think that you can go to school for a useless major like me, art, and, you know,
Well, I
still
don't
make
consider
something
yours
of it.
useless because you
I'm just
definitely
joking,
use it. Yep.
but I think that what you have doesn't dictate what you do with it. And I think that
I
you've
agree.
really kind of proved that with Beantown. I mean, really with most of the things you're doing. And I think that one of the things I learned from your talk about your book is kind of like that ability to take something, even if it's a really small idea, even if it's something really, you know, tiny, and really make that into a reality. But what makes it a reality is not seeing its limitations, but seeing what it could be.
Absolutely. And going back to the college education, the issue is that a lot of kids will go into a major not even knowing what it entails. Because I've known kids that do a business major, but then you mentioned that they're going to be stuck in an office 9 to 5. And you're like, wait, what do you mean? Or some kids go to law school and now they're going to be stuck in a courtroom and they don't realize the amount of paperwork that it involves and the research and the case studies. So it's all a matter of, as you said, what do you do with it? You need to know what you're getting into and have the courage to say, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm switching my major. Or maybe this isn't for me at all. I'm going to do something different.
Right.
And sometimes it's tough when you have parents that are like, nope, this is what you're going to do. And I know it can make for, and I'm not saying to, you know, start revolting against your parents, but just to be able to be true to yourself about what am I actually going to do with this and how happy am I going to be doing it.
So as I'm listening to you and hearing you talk about your children, you know, I realize that your speaking engagements, your book are kind of informed by so many different things. They're informed by being a parent, having your experience and training in the state police department, running your own business, a production company, running the Sarah Joy Foundation and helping other people along the way start their businesses too. It seems like you're bringing all of this knowledge, which seemingly disparate areas of life here all into one, culminating in this speaking engagement and book. So I'm looking forward to reading it. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you.
I think so many of us sometimes think that change is really insurmountable, that we can't get over the current things we're going through. I really learned a lot today from what you've said about how to move forward from those initial steps, take baby steps till you get there. And really a lot about how kindness within everything you do can motivate people, can motivate yourself, and really create a lot of change in the world. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
This is terrific. So Charlie, listen, you know, if people are listening to this, they want to get involved in the Sarah Joy Foundation. We have links to that below. If they want to learn about your next speaking engagement, we'll have links to that as well. If they want to be informed when your book is more, widely available, we'll have that as well. Really pick your flavor with anything that Charlie has to offer here, and pick all flavors really, because I think what you're doing is wonderful. You're one of those people that are inspiring us. You are showing that one person can make a change, taking that first step and really impacting the lives of everyone around you. Your story is fantastic. I greatly appreciate you sharing that with me. Thank you for your service at the State Police Department, all those years, protecting all of us. And I really hope that you can come back at some point and tell us a little bit more about what's been happening in your life. And thank you for being here so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a great... Signing off at Video Creators Lounge. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks.